We have a trustee, DeBoer is in the back. Village manager Ryan is in the back. We have police department here. We have fire here. So what we're going to do is Devin's going to go over a brief overview of different, as you see the maps that are laid out, or different locations that are laid out. He's going to kind of go over the different locations we looked at and things of how we kind of are landing, where we're kind of landing right now to put it out to the public. Obviously, we're here to talk about potential, new police department and the admin going with it. We'll talk about that when we get into those things, and obviously fire department as well. Not moving with it, they would be staying in the same location. This time, a little different than last time, we're gonna have microphones, so what I'm gonna kind of do, I don't necessarily have runners to run the microphones, so maybe if we put a microphone on this side of the room and this side of the room, whatever's easiest, but if we can kind of pass the baton when we get to questions. So Devin is gonna give kind of a presentation, and then what we'll do is I will come back up here. As I said, we have police is here, we have fire here. We're gonna be here to answer any of your questions. If anybody wants a tour at the end of this, if anybody wants a tour of the police station, that's available for you tonight, so you can see what we're running into and how we came to this. Devin's gonna kind of talk about how there was a needs study that went into this and how we landed on all this, and I'll talk about it more. But I'll pass it to Devin. There also will be tours of fire if you want. Is that available tonight, Chief? If anybody wants to tour fire, that is available as well. So we'll work that after. So we'll do Devin presentation, and then we'll kind of have a little town hall and go back and forth, and then we will, we'll do tours. Sir. Devin works for Keller and Associates. So Devin's part of doing a need study for. He's a consultant, yes. Devin's a consultant with Keller and Associates, so he is part of doing a need study, meaning police department came and asked, saying they're out of room, they're busting at the seams. So we thought the best thing to do, I'm not a professional space engineer, and we don't have those on the board, so in those kind of situations, just like when we go to a lawyer, we go to a professional that deals with those kind of things instead of, one thing you'll hear me say is I want to keep your money in your pocket. We go and get someone to say, do we really need more space? And we have a space needs analysis done. Once that was done, that's how we started saying, okay, we got to make some type of move or do something or renovate or whatever we have to do. But so Devin is with Keller and Associates, and he is a consultant, yes. So I'll let Devin take it over, and then I'll come up after that.
Well, thank you for coming tonight. I'm with Keller. I'm a project manager. I'm not a big fan of multiple hour presentations, so mine is going to be 15, 20 minutes, hit on the big points. This is 4 years of work, which extends further in the past than just Keller. I don't want to sit here and give you every nut and bolt. If there's questions, walking away tonight, the goal is to answer the questions. If we don't know the answers, we're going to go back to and get those answers for you. But again, I want to keep it 15, 20 minutes, so we're really just hitting those highlights. There's tons of documents and all sorts of things, but I don't necessarily want to bring all of that. And everyone's here, gracious enough to come here tonight. You could be with your family, so I'm going to hit the main points. I saved this to the end of the slide last time, so instead I'm going to bring it up to the front. There are a lot of different sites that we evaluated. Where police and admin is right now is the old bowling alley, if I am understanding that correctly. So I want to start with that and just kind of preface the meeting. This is where our intention and our focus is. But to give you a little bit of background, why are we here? Well, police and fire are the main culprits of having deficient facilities. So there are some concerns as far as safety within both police and fire. Difference, fire you deal with a lot of decontamination. They are wildly outdated. They simply just do not have basic today's standards. When you're looking into the future, they certainly don't meet future needs, but today. So those are the main why. Why are we here? Police and admin, the space is too small. They have a lot of deficiencies, and there's a lot of concerns with future. They just keep cramming more and more people within spaces that were built quite a long time ago. So where this started, it actually started with another firm called Zimmerman. They worked with the village between 2022 and 2023. They did a needs assessment, they went through the plans, or they went through the building. So what is a needs assessment? A needs assessment is an architect sitting down over many, many, many hours and meetings trying to understand how their department functions. So I do a lot of public safety. So when people say, well, just give me an average fire station, what does that mean? Every fire station is a unique prototype that's never been done because every community is different. All the geography is different within that community, whether it's rivers, farmlands, whatever it may be. So they're all different, they're all unique. So that was with Zimmerman. Ended up switching over to Keller in 2024, and here we are today. What have we done since? We did a lot of investigation, a lot of understanding of what those needs are. So where we are today is we finally have some things to show the village, where we started off. So really trying to understand, like I keep saying, those needs. Fire station, so where their square footage needs are roughly 19,000, approximately. Every layout is a little differently, but that's a starting point for understanding. From a station comparison, that tends to be where they are. They can go up as high as, this community is never, depending on who you are, it's just not a Sun Prairie, it's not a Madison, it's a rural, basic, and it's just the culture, right? We don't need the fancy elaborate. And it's really bare bones needs at that 19,000. So where they are today, they are 8,900 square feet. So you may ask me, is that normal to be so undersized? With public safety, I would argue with just Wisconsin in general, this is where I do all of my work. The mentality is make work with what you got. And I think that's very common in volunteerism, public safety, and we do see that quite frequently. So there is a massive, where that space is, it's not necessarily making their offices larger. The majority of that square footage is just simply the decontamination, the showers, all of these rooms that simply just don't exist today, adding those to a facility. So then we get to the police. Where their needs are approximately 22-ish thousand square feet. Where their current square footage is 8,500 square feet. Again, you've just got a wide bridge. The main driver of that, again, make do with what you got, but these buildings haven't been updated in quite a long time. Got your money's worth, and eventually we end up in spots like we are today. The police. So this building is nearly 100 years old, and the most recent addition is in the 1980s, which is 45 years. So when we're looking at life cycles of buildings, we're talking, 50 to 100 years. Depends on what it's made of. There's some variability in that, but obviously, when we're at 100 years here, we're really looking at pushing the limits of what this building can handle. Admin. So you'll hear us talk about rec and admin. So when we look at police in this building, making it work with police on this site is not feasible. So then we talk about having police go elsewhere. And we'll get to the site discussion here in a minute, but why are we talking about rec and admin? Well, similar reasons is this building is undersized for police, and there are some limitations within the building itself. If police goes elsewhere, does it make sense for rec and admin to stay here? Well, if we're looking at a 50-year building, there's a ton of investments that should be made within this building. And at the end of the day, layouts, there's, I don't want to say deficiencies, but there's certainly some deficiencies. Maintenance upgrades, a lot of costs need to be considered. So that's where we start comparing. Does it make sense for them to stay here? Does it make sense for them to go elsewhere? When police and admin and rec are in a single building, there's a lot of cost-sharing spaces. And because of that, and because of the cost here, it made a lot of sense for rec and admin to go elsewhere. The question that we got a lot last time is, what do we do with this building? That answer has not been decided yet. I don't want to say we're early on, but we are trying to work out a lot of these things as we progress forward. Okay. So then, how did we get to where we are today? This is likely the site plan that brought a lot of people here. when we talk about sites, what did we actually look at? These are, I think there's some extra ones, but these are the ones that I was able to find from my notes. Cottonwood Wayside, the existing Cottonwood parcel, Herb Smith Heritage, Zion Church, Zion School, Hartbrook Park, Hart Ridge Green Space, existing Public Works parcel, existing fire station parcel, Centennial Park, Waukesha State Bank parcel, which is the old bowling alley, in the existing quarry site. So over the past quite a few months, we've been evaluating and trying to find the right site that makes sense. We ended up at Hartbrook, and obviously that is no longer the option that we are pursuing. It's not the reaction we got last time, so thank you very much.
Should have started with that last time.
Maybe I should have. So what I talked about last time, and I can certainly give insight, but I'm just going to skip over it, is why Hartbrook made sense. If anyone cares, we certainly had reasons. We had a lot of thoughts. Taking this park, I will say with confidence, every time we talked about this with the village board, they brought up the fact that it's a park. What are we going to do? How are we going to navigate it? This was never set in stone. We're trying to bring solutions forward. Now, up here, I certainly don't like bringing solutions forward that are contestable or uncomfortable. There's never a perfect project with a perfect site and perfect everything, but we have to bring something forward and then listen and take that feedback and go back to the drawing board, which is exactly what the village board instructed us to do. So I wish we could bring the better solution first, but I think the main thing is that we did a lot of due diligence, we're willing to listen, and we want to make sure we're making the right choice for the long term. We didn't just pick a site and close our eyes. We did a ton of research to try to figure out what options we had. So I kind of skipped over fire. So let's go back. Existing sites. Fire and EMS. What does location actually matter? So you got a lot of turning radius, you have a lot of site limitations, but when we talk about fire and EMS, a huge item is response time. Where does it make sense for that fire and that EMS to be located within the community that the response time makes sense for everyone? You don't want it on the outskirts, on the south or the north or the east or the west, because it's not fair to everyone else. Generally speaking, their existing site makes a lot of sense. So when we talk about this, that's usually the first driver, and it really made sense to keep it here. We could talk about moving it to other sites. Those were some of the site plans that we evaluated along the way, and really keeping it here made sense. There are site limitations, obviously, especially I think it was last week or the week before. That park was not as green as it's shown on here. So, bringing the building up, we got to do stormwater, we got to do a lot of different things, but keeping it there. You own the site, it makes sense financially, it makes sense response time, so it's really a great site to keep fire and EMS there. A next question is, well, you tear the building down, what do you do in the meantime? It's a great question. We have not worked out those options. There's a handful of different things communities do. They don't go on the street by any means, but trying to figure out what makes sense, the time of the year, what options are available, and obviously what makes financial sense. I mean, you don't want to spend extra money if you don't need to. So from a fire, fairly straightforward. Why not just add on? So we can get into all the nuts and bolts. The first option the village board wanted to do, and I pushed very hard, add on. Generally speaking, it makes sense. It's easier to just add on to something, and the biggest issue is we just saw the numbers keep rolling and rolling, and it became very challenging. Roof line and existing conditions really make this a struggle, and in order to make this a long-term building option that really the community, it works well, We're literally tearing everything out, tearing the roof off, and we're left with concrete floor, and half the concrete floor has got to get ripped up because of the trench drains, and all electrical's ripped out, and we end up with walls and some concrete floor. And by the time we do all of that selective demo, the numbers were very, very, very close. So going new made a lot of sense. Now I'm going to breeze through these other sites, like the Zion site. And I want to reiterate, just this site alone, I want to say we had 3 or 4 different options, 3 for sure. So every time, I got an architect with me, I'm a project manager, but going back to the drawing board, trying to make it work. So just this site, we had 3 different options trying to evaluate different solutions. This was one of the many sites that we tried to look at. But where we are today, and I can go through a lot of the stuff I went through last time, but I don't know that anyone cared. So this is the site we are evaluating. It makes sense. There are some limitations. We are very, very early. So the last meeting we had was a week ago. We started digging into this site a week or 2 before that, and we were able to end up with police and admin fitting on this site. We are evaluating what other options. This is not a final design by any means. The architect is working on trying to utilize the site a little bit better. I see some limitations with just this layout, cost effectiveness, and really trying to utilize space a little more appropriately. So this is going to change over the next couple weeks and likely couple months. I can kind of let the board speak to where they're at with the process of the site. But I wanted to, did I hit all of the main points? So I'll jump back a little bit, I'm sorry. Fire station property, it was built in 1964. There was an addition in 1974. So the original building is 61 years old. Like I said, life cycles, 50 to 100 years, depending on what it is. So you're looking at, that is the life cycle that you get out of most buildings. Can you get longer? Absolutely, but that does require constant capital investment. And with an addition in 1974, unfortunately, there's not a lot being invested. So a lot of the systems, a lot of the things in there are older. Some of the limitations on that site, floodplain, so we can't just start adding tons and tons of building. We really have to stay in this area. Parking, and then those are the main items I wanted to hit. I don't like long PowerPoint presentations. The main focus I have tonight is to answer the questions. So I was short and sweet, kind of hit the main points. And as you kind of think about your questions here, that's where we're headed next. So what are our general next steps? Well, we're in August right now. We're going to continue working on this, not that site. Let me get the right one. We're going to continue working on this site and getting a little further down the road. This is not the final product. It will take some time. Big picture. When are we actually going to have some more meat on the bone, if you will? I would say probably, next month, September, maybe by October, we should have some more updates for the village. I don't want to tell you to, keep your eye and come to every single meeting. It's, your time is very valuable. And like I said, I'm not going to have all this updated tomorrow. So as we move forward, all these are going to, every meeting I've had is with, these village board meetings. It's all at the public meetings. It's, important to make sure that everything is up there, transparent. So I think that's the short and sweet version. So now I will turn the light on, and do we want to go to questions?
Yeah, I'll give a little brief.
Perfect.
And then we'll get questions. So the last time that we were together, we were going to do it a little bit different style, but this is the style that people wanted, so that's why we went with it this time as well. One question that came up, we were going to do it where if someone wanted to come and ask the board, or ask fire, or ask police, so that they could get their individual questions answered without someone having to hear something that they might not have a question about. They didn't have to necessarily be here the entire time. But someone brought up and said, we don't want this to be hearsay, so we want to hear the answer to all the questions. So that's why we did it this way. I'll get to you in just a minute. I do appreciate you going over all the different sites. There was a lot of sites that were looked into. The board did look really hard into trying to save as much money as possible on doing this. I mean, the first step was, do we really need to do this, or is fire and police asking for something that they just want some extra? And it became very clear that that's not what the case was. So then it means now you have to look for buildings and things like that. I wanted to touch on a few things because I know that there's been a lot that's been out there, and I want to, number one, for the respect of the board and how hard the board members have worked. We have two trustees here now, Trustee DeBoer and Trustee Trutchell, and how hard staff has worked on this. When people talk, we do respond. People started coming to meetings when they heard about it, and we have been working on this for a long time. It wasn't in hiding, everything was in open meetings. And I understand people aren't gonna come to every single meeting, but someone's like, you need to give all of that information, mailing should come out to the house. So we did that, and I believe we spent, I don't know exact number, but I believe it was $2,100 to mail thing on this info session to every single address in Hartland. Now, this is what I mean, like when you're an elected official, it's a tough thing, and what's a waste and what's not, what's the best use of money, maybe not a waste, but the best use of money. We had about 60 people here at the last week's session, and it looks like we got about 30 or 40 that are here now, but so if you put that together, out of 10,000 people, we have 100 that came out for $2,100. We don't typically do mailings every single time we have something going. I understand people are saying this is such a big issue, you should have known, you should have done this. I'm just letting you know that not only myself, but the board has put stuff out on Facebook, on their own Facebook pages, on Lake Country 411. We've contacted with press releases with the Freeman each time we got to a big step with the Waukesha Freeman. So we really are trying to get the information to you, and that's why we're having this information session. The other thing I wanted to touch on before we start, and this isn't saying that we're right, but the room you're sitting in right now used to be the library, the Hartland Public Library. If you get a chance to leave, it might be closed if you don't leave before 8, but if you go into the Hartland Public Library, I guess what I want to tell you is this isn't the first time Hartland's done any type of expanding. Hartland's been expanding for a long time. In the 1970s, they made a move that they wanted to double the size of the village, and they put in Hartridge subdivision, which led to a huge expansion in the village and then a serious uptick in population. I understand and I hear comments where people are saying, hey, Hartland isn't what it used to be. I get it. I mean, we can go way back. It didn't used to have a freeway coming through it. Highway 16 used to go down Capitol Drive and up to Highway 83, and people in Hartland just didn't drive during the weekends. They walked because there was absolutely no parking, and it was bumper to bumper traffic of people coming from the east heading up north, and then on Sundays they were coming back home. So I just wanted to touch on that, but we can get to questions. I just wanted to say, no one's wrong for having concerns, even if they don't want us to do any of this, and I encourage you to ask the departments or ask myself during this, as we go back and forth and talk about it. But out of respect for the board, and I really commend them for their hard work and staff's hard work and Devin's hard work, we aren't doing it because it's just like, hey, there's been comments out there of Jeff Vanderstill just wants to put his name on a building. I was the one that brought it to the village after I was elected because I didn't want to wait until he passed away and said it should be the Dick Landwehr or Richard Landwehr Municipal building. And when we did that at that time, I said, and other buildings that would be built, it would carry that name. So there's a lot of that out there also. But anyways, we'll get to questions. These mics are on. If you guys can help me pass mics around for questions, then they pick it up on YouTube.
We've got 2 of them, so we can always have
Yep.
one for the
Yep.
next question.
Question, where is that Zion site exactly? Where is it located?
The Zion site, he's not going to hear it over, you're not going to hear that over a speaker, but the people watching on YouTube will. The Zion site is, the Zion, we looked briefly at the church, but that was more a community center based up on what would be West Capitol, where the two churches are across the street from each other. But on East Capitol, there's the Zion School. The big gym is there. Sometimes if you ever drive down, East Capitol heading out of town, like where the old Sluggers property used to be, that church was there, but they're shutting down the school. And all they're going to be using is the gymnasium for church services, or at least that was the plan at the time. So I, along with Ryan and along with consulting with the board, went and spoke to, and our clerk went as well, people from the DPW, fire, and police, We went over to Zion because actually the site, it was a really nice site. If we could utilize that, we would have had to purchase it from them. We really went to great lengths because it was such a good site. And I mean, it's not far from my home, not because I want police closer. I'm just saying some people are like, I don't want it near my home. But I mean, I thought it was a good site for Hartland because of the logistics of it. Were really, really good. But it was the school site, but they ended up saying there's just still a really big emotional attachment to it and they're not ready to sell it. And we weren't necessarily ready to kind of wait that out. And there's no saying on which way they'll go with it.
One of the other things, while we're going to the next question,
Who else wants
is
to ask
when we're
anybody over here?
evaluating sites for villages and cities, it's, with a town, you got all sorts of land, so you can pick and choose what you want. With villages and cities, you have to evaluate what is even feasible, and then start digging further and further into it.
Go ahead with your question.
With the bowling alley site, it looks like it's 2 properties maybe. Was that the bowling alley across 2 plots of land?
Two
two
parcels
tax
owned by
entities.
one owner.
I see.
2 tax entities that haven't been made one, so
And
it's
is
still
there
2.
enough space in that location for what you plan to do?
Yeah.
Yes,
'Cause-
it's looking favorable.
Yeah, because I know right away when we heard about it, I thought, and my son said, why don't they use the bowling alley site that's been sitting empty for years?
The
So-
bowling alley site, and I'll get this out of the way because there is that. The bowling alley site wasn't original, and this was based on the board, and I mean I agree with it, and I was a hard pusher, and I don't really believe it. The bowling alley didn't want to sell the site originally, and I'm not a firm believer. You know how I heard you say, and I say it trying to bring a little bit of humor in, but I do want to keep the money in your pocket, which is part of the reason we ended up at the park because it saves whatever 1.5 or 2 million or 2.5 million dollars. But I'm not a big believer in the government flexing its muscles unless it's absolutely, absolutely, absolutely necessary. And eminent domain, when you have private property and private property rights, whether it's a business that's left it vacant for a long time, legally they didn't have to. I'm not saying that's how it would have been if I was around when they did what they did. But I wasn't elected at that time, and the board wasn't in place at the time. But they didn't want to sell. And
But now it's the bank that owns it?
the bank does own it. Waukesha State Bank owns it. And the talks are going very good. I commend that institution. They've been really great in talking with them. They've been, great. I met with the CEO. We talked about it. They came to a meeting. They said they're not going to stand in the way. They just hope that they're compensated appropriately, justly, and fairly, which I 100% agree they should be. But they are being very, very, very good to work with so far.
That site seems to be, the access from Highway 16 and it's kind of,
Well, and it's only I believe 1,200 feet from the other site that we were looking at by going to the park.
Right.
Again, and I know the park is like
I don't believe
why are
you
you
have to
thinking
worry
about the park? The only reason we were looking, we were very cognizant of the money. We were trying to look at if the village owns land, let's utilize it.
and no
but that's-
floodplain there, so.
Right.
Which is nice.
Go ahead.
Did any of these plans do an evaluation of the traffic patterns, the current vehicle and pedestrian patterns, and the impact having additional emergency response vehicles going into that traffic pattern as far as safety and response time goes? Has there been an evaluation of that?
Well, existing fire, obviously that works as of today. Police with this particular site, we did not yet. It's kind of one of the stepping stones as we get a little further. So fire obviously has a lot of response. Police is a little different where they will have squads located throughout. So responding from police, while some people do respond, a lot of folks are already out in their squads around. So as I talked earlier about response time, it's not that the response time isn't important. It's just how they respond is different because they already have people out in the community. But that is one of the things that we're going to have to dig into as we get further along with this site.
Usually anytime we do a development, when we get closer with things, this comes back to the money. Until you know where you're going to be, you wouldn't do a traffic study. Just like we haven't done environmental studies on the land even. We're not there yet because it's not, unless you know you're going to be there, you don't pay. Those things aren't cheap. But usually when we have a development, we force a developer, they have to get a traffic study in almost all cases. I don't think we've ever had one where we didn't. I can say, I mean, just from my assessment of it, as opposed to going out onto Cottonwood or going towards the park, the road is wider there. It has much quicker access to the freeway. It has much quicker access in both directions of the village just because of the arteries that they're near. So it is, but a traffic assessment has not been done yet.
I mean, I live up in Chestnut Ridge, so during the school year, you can't get out of there with the Arrowhead traffic there.
Yeah.
I mean, it is congested bumper to bumper.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just wondered, what the response time, is there more than one entrance or exit from
Yeah,
these
because
sites?
if you look on the building won't necessarily look like this. I mean, the board and Keller and Devin have not had time to sit down and even do, and even they haven't had time to draw it up because this happened very quickly, which I'll touch on at some point in this meeting. But so back here, just imagine like in the ceiling would be Sunny Slope, and down here you have Hartbrook Drive, okay? So if you look, even how they already have it kind of set up, now they don't have a throughway through here, but see how they have an alleyway here?
Over there.
They would be able to get to Sunny Slope and get over towards Merton Ave. They'd be able to get to Sunny Slope if they needed to get around because there was an accident down here. And they would be able to get also to, they would also be able to get to Hartridge Drive and get out, along with, that's not including, even though this is showing green space here, we do butt up to another, we would butt up to Beeble's parking lot, which butts up to all the rest of that parking lot. And there's a chance that that'll be talked about to say, this doesn't make sense not to have this open. What if something happened right in front of and they had to get out that way? I mean, for the safety of everybody, you should let us use it as a way of getting in an emergency case where we had to use it. Also, I want to touch on what Devin said. In a lot of cases, unlike fire is, in a lot of cases, is responding from the house, as we call it, but they're responding from the station. Police, it's true, a lot of what they do when they're in the building, some people don't believe this, but I'm hoping many of you believe me when I say this. A lot of their time when they go to the department, police officers, they're going and they're doing reports, whether it's that they just had, and the amount of reporting that they have to do is insane, but they're there because they have to go and they have to type up the reports and turn them in, and it's real meticulous and they have to do that. But the other time that they have is spent, and I'm sure you see the squads out, it's checking on calls. There's things where they have domestic disputes where someone's moving out of a house and they're scared that the other person living in the house is going to create chaos while they're moving out. So they have to go and they have to just sit there. So a lot of their time is spent out of the station, and I'm not saying that it doesn't happen often, but I don't know the percentage, but much of the time when police are responding,
You just asked that question, less than 50, well
less
less.
than 50% of the time, police are responding from the station. I believe you had a question back here.
A couple comments actually. So first, I want to commend Jeff and the board for getting the information out there. I don't come to any of the meetings, but I watch every one of them on YouTube. And I gotta say, for all the questions that a lot of people are asking, you guys did ask those questions at the board. People there at the meetings asked those questions, and I had to say it, but a lot of these things are on us as people to not knowing that information, because it is out there. You guys have been saying those things and asking a lot of the same questions. Like I said, I want to commend you guys for going out there and getting all those questions about the park. I heard you guys all ask those questions before it got on Lake Country 401 and all that. You guys were asking about green spaces and stuff like that. I have a very busy life, is like all you guys, so putting it earbud in and watching it while you're making dinner or whatever, listening to it, is pretty simple to do.
Right.
I mean, the second thing I want to say is I spent 22 years as a firefighter paramedic in a neighborhood community. I do know people in the department very well, and I've worked with them closely also, and I understand the needs of the fire department, as well as my brothers in blue. What they have, they need a lot more space and stuff like that. And it is a necessary thing for, as the communities grow, to get bigger. I'm glad we have a solution to the Harper Park issue, but I think that there needs to be a major consideration for the cost on this. As a taxpayer, I feel like this plan is too much, and there's got to be cheaper options out there. I know you guys have looked into that, but I do watch all the meetings, like I said, and some of the numbers just don't add up to me. We all know that the Arrowhead referendum failed multiple times because of the numbers. And they were asking for quite a bit more money, $136 million, which is a lot more than what you guys are asking for. But when it breaks down, it's actually more money what you guys are asking for per thousand on your taxes than what Arrowhead was asking for. And the additional money that you guys are asking for, the 29.5 million, if you include the interest, it's actually $45.4 million that you guys are asking for.
I don't know that exact amount, but it'd be something.
That's the number that
something
you
like
guys, that Keller gave you
Yeah,
guys
it'll be something in there.
on January
Yeah.
9th.
Yep.
So the numbers about that is not including Mr. Bailey mentioned at the January 9th meeting that there's another $3 million that you guys are gonna have to borrow next year for roads. All this I have, the problem is Harlan's already $19.4 million in debt. So we're adding all this debt on. I just think this, again, I agree that something needs to happen. This $29 million is astronomical number. There's got to be other options out there. I do like this new site again. I think it's a great idea. Glad we got it. I kind of do feel like there's an option of having the fire and police and admin all in the same building. It's obviously a much bigger property than Hartbrook Park was. I understand going up or down adds cost to a building, but you're using one building, not two. You're eliminating the cost of having to find fire a place to live for a year. You're getting more green space, which, God, that please everybody about the green space issue.
Right.
Because then you could probably get that park back to where where the fire is now. I know that Hartbrook Drive would be very beneficial for a firefighter aspect of things. Is you would have the entrance, like you were just saying, from both sides, so you can get your drive-through fire station. You can get easy access to 16. There's a lot of benefits to it. The one thing that frustrates me back to the numbers real quick is in the June 9th meeting, Mr. Panistel and Mr. Bailey both said how our tax rate went down in 2023 from 4.85 to 3.85 per thousand. I printed out all my taxes from the past 6 years since I lived here.
Yeah.
My taxes never went down because that same year that the tax rate went down, my property value skyrocketed. So actually my property value, the price I paid that year went up. So when Mr. Bailey said how only 20 cents per thousand isn't that bad, well, I think that is a lot of money. When you're talking adding whatever the number was, I have it out of order now, but I think there's, like I said, the last time I was saying is there's a lot of things that can be done, and
Sure. So to touch on that, and I'd like to open that door here because, and thank you for the kind comments and thank you for bringing up the questions like you are, because sometimes people don't see what we're seeing on the board or even that staff is seeing. But in asking the question, and I'm not picking, but you're saying you just think it can be done cheaper and the village is already in debt. So do you have a suggestion? And I'm saying based on the fact that the state says you can't raise tax to take care of the roads and all that was already being done. So we can back off on the roads, which is what we borrow for each year, and other capital expenditures. Capital expenditures is stuff that we build, sewer mains, things like that. Well, actually, even that comes out of water, so I'm misspeaking already. But most of that is roads. We can't borrow. We don't borrow for personnel. We don't borrow for any of that. It's only for building and maintaining. But the state won't. So the other option is to get out of debt, which, I mean, maybe someday we would have to do that. Because I do agree with you. I hate the fact that we're doing things on debt. But when the rule was put in place that you cannot raise taxes and debt was already up, the point being, we're going to have to give up some services if we're going to get rid of that. But what is your suggestion if you say there's got to be a cheaper way? And I'll kind of lean a little bit on Keller to say, because we looked at a lot of cheaper ways, including rehabbing this building. And there's another thing that I'm going to touch on and jump in if I'm wrong. I mean, I did, and I really mean this, and I think that the board would agree with me, and they even jumped in where we really hammered on them on the money, like, oh my God, we even hammered on the police chief and the fire chief, like, oh my God, this is a lot of money. Because at first we thought it was all just bells and whistles. When someone builds And now remember, these are emergency services buildings. So the code, the state code, which I believe is very closely tied to the US code, especially Hartland's ordinances now, when we build a building, even if we start digging into it to rehab it, the code from 1960s or 1970s, or in this case 1940s that we have in the police department, those codes change dramatically because these buildings need to be there that if half of this room is in a catastrophic event, these people need to be able to respond. Someone made the comment on Facebook and says, you just need a tin shed and park the trucks in it. I mean, it's easy to say those things just like it's easy to say, well, just do it cheaper. But I mean, we're open to suggestions on doing it cheaper. We've been looking for 3 years to do it cheaper. And another thing that we face is every year we go longer, I don't know what the exact amount is, but it seems like it's going up 6 to 10% every single time we pass by a year because of inflation. To touch on the tax money, the tax rate has been driven down. If you take the average taxes on all the homes in the Village of Hartland, that tax rate did go down. Now, this is going to upset a lot of people, or at least I fall in that bucket. All of the people that had smaller homes that are anywhere from 200,000 up to 600,000, 500,000, your taxes went up dramatically because the people that lived in $1 million, $1.5, and $1.8 million homes, their taxes dropped dramatically, as did commercial property, because as we all know, the interest rate goes up and it really slows down someone buying a $1.5 million house. But the interest rates didn't go up so high to stop. Yeah, I mean, all of us remember when it was 3 and 2.8%, people were buying like crazy. The money was so cheap, and what happens? People grab it, and then they're fighting. I mean, for goodness sakes, let's not forget we went through an economic situation. We all heard about it, where people were putting in offers for $50,000 over the asking price with no contingencies, no inspection. That causes, I might not be willing to do that, and you might not be willing to do that, but there was people living in Wauwatosa and West Dallas and other areas that were just to get to Lake Country. And that's unfortunate. We do live in an area, and I hate to say it, it's not like a lot of other areas, because people are willing to pay a premium, because every place that we don't want to live in or that we think is too expensive and we say we're going to move out because it's too expensive, there's 50 people from the east that really want to get hold of that property. And I'm just saying what's real. If you have suggestions on how to do it cheaper, I busted on Devin really hard because I'm like, there's got to be a way. You're giving us a Cadillac plan. I mean, we changed all of this because the former company we were working with came in and said, well, I gave you the Cadillac plan and then we can work it down to like the Chevy plan. And I'm like, no, that's not how we do it in Hartland. Just give us the Chevy plan right out of the gate. We don't need the Cadillac plan. And I really mean that seriously. And they've done a fantastic job. I mean, there was other issues with that, but like I say, trying to bring a little humor because we're going to be here for a little bit. But if you have suggestions on how to do it cheaper, but one thing I would like, and I'm not saying this in a rude way, but when you say there's got to be a way to do, we're looking for it. So if you find it, please let us know, because we're looking for it. But I mean, Devin, please jump. I mean, we're looking for it. We're looking for a cheaper way to do it.
One of the challenges, I get to go all over and work on all different buildings all throughout the state. The biggest challenge that you face right now is for the past 60 years, or I guess, 60 years ago, they built a building and let's say they paid it off for 20. So for the past 40 years, the fire station, so you're not remodeling, you're not keeping up on this. And ultimately, it's great when those years transpire because you don't have to invest. The community's not paying for it. And unfortunately, it's like any one of our houses or anything, if you don't continually reinvest, eventually you're just deferring those costs down the road, and here we are. It's not very common to have, 2 big projects like this going at once, but unfortunately, this is where we are. Cost-wise, the 29.5 is not where we started. We came in what I thought very bare bones initially. I want to say it was at least 5, maybe 10 million higher through a whole bunch of options that we continually pushed further and further, condensed, shared. So it's a lot of money. One of the biggest drivers of Hartbrook Park, and I'm just going to be very straightforward, was you owned the land. I have been getting hammered on by the board to save every single penny. When we talk about decisions, this board isn't necessarily, you get some boards, all they care about is a $500,000 or $250,000 decisions, and then you guys figure out the rest. The board wants to know that every $100, $1,000 decision is the right decision we're making. So, when we talk about budgets, I mean, to me, that was the main driver of Hartbrook, because you owned it. Obviously, that's not a good site. That's not the direction we're going, but now we got to figure out what we're going to do with this site, because it's obviously not going to be free. Again, we're open. We're here because we are open. We're interested to learn, or hear perspectives. We're doing everything we can. We don't want to just spend money to spend money. I can assure you that no community, no board I work with wants to build a building just to do it. It's a very, very big challenge, and it's certainly not easy.
There's,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I just want to say, just a reminder, like with all this, that 29 is like the max we're thinking. Could be less. Interest rates go down, it's going to be less. It's fully furnished. It's not a building. It's everything inside of it. It's all the locks, all the alarms, security, doors, windows, everything. So the 29.5, he's hoping is the top, and Devin's confident that is the absolute top. All of this would go out for public bid. We're not giving it to John's buddy and Tim's friend. It is all a public bidding process that this all would go through for every aspect of it. And Keller would project manage that.
And the one other thing I want to, thank you, Ryan. The one other thing I want to touch on what you had said, and we're not hiding this. I know this came up with the Arrowhead thing. We're not hiding it. When we give you information, we give you things that we know are factual. So we did give a range. So I guess we could give a range, but I don't know what that is. But the range we came up with for Keller was it needs to be, well, Keller came up and we said, where can you land on this? But we said, this can't be more than 29.5. Keller came to us and said, it's going to land between 24.5 million and 29.5 million. And their answer to us was, you're most likely going to be somewhere towards the middle of that. But they have to leave themselves some wiggle room, because we have strapped them and said, it cannot go one penny more than 29.5 million, not a penny. So that's why there's a range. Now, you had touched on the interest rates. We're not hiding that. That is the truth. We are borrowing the money, the $1.10 per $1,000 worth of value this is for both projects. This is for police and fire. That would be additional tax. That $1.10 is, I don't know what the rate is based on, but Ryan is right. If the rates drop, it costs a lot less, obviously, especially with this amount of money. If the rates, for whatever reason, we don't know, most likely they won't, but if they go up, go ahead. Right.
The 29.5 million was without buying the land.
How much
Yes.
is the land that you have to purchase?
We don't know yet.
Right, so it makes sense at the park if you're gonna.
Can we give you a microphone?
The land.
I want to fill
Oh.
up your question. You asked
I'll
me a
let you
question.
touch on that again, because I want you to have a mic.
So I just want to finish. So you
Yep.
asked me about
Yeah.
a solution. So that's why I know I brought up the money, because a lot of these people here weren't listening to the meeting. I'm assuming not. That's why I brought up the money, just because I know you said the numbers. I got those
Yep.
numbers from the meeting
Yep.
that I watched.
Yeah.
The solution that I want you, I know you guys looked at it with the Hartbrook Park parcel, was multiple stories. I heard you guys discuss the pros and cons of going up and stuff like that. But now we're in a different location. I guess that my question is, are you guys sticking with this? And that's final answer. You're sticking with
We're having an
two
information
separate
session, so
properties?
it'll help us get to a final answer.
So that's kind of my suggestion, is maybe can we re-look at putting all facilities in one building? Fire, police, admin, and if it will fit in that thing. The police
That would
talked about
not fit
last.
on this. That would not fit on this location.
Well, but my suggestion is, I know going up and going down costs more money, but the police have, a lot of that is for their storage, for their evidence storage. That's a lot for first floor, a lot of real estate for the storage of this evidence that they have to keep for 50 years. I mean, I understand going up is expensive, but for storage, for going up and going down, having that, I mean, I just want to make sure, just asking if that's going to be reassessed, or if we're just stuck with two separate buildings.
Yes,
Go ahead.
For us, the fire. Let's pick on the fire station for a second. We did a full evaluation of what a remodel, what a new. This was put together very quickly. I think we have a ton of work. A shared use building was discussed last time. I don't have a good answer. Can it fit? Does it make sense? What is the cost? We got to figure that out, and I think we got to bring that to the board, and that's one of the things. We got to make sure that, you know, that we're doing what's right. If there's any options, alternatives, you know, push and pull, we got to figure it out and dig into it. And
That's
that's one
all I
of
was
the
asking.
things.
Is this if it's still a possibility? Because I don't know. My brain is thinking one building would be cheaper than two separate properties. Gets the green space away. Obviously, we could sell this, you know, and do whatever you guys want to do with this place. But like, I don't know. That's just my only option. I know. I'm just saying. What's the solution?
It
That's
is
my
one of the
only
things that
option I have.
I brought it up at the very beginning because originally when the thought was we need to expand, I'm like, okay, let's go 2 stories right over there, right in the parking lot. They can stay here. They don't have to move. We'll move across the way. Police will be in there. Everything will be all good. And looking at the studies and stuff like that, which we looked at a lot, they looked at department and stuff, and it's something that we can it kind of went away because they really felt strongly about being on one because of the connectivity. When you go and see the tour, and maybe you've already seen it, but when you're bringing people in, you pull into a garage, now you have someone in custody. We don't have a jail. People keep saying, what do you need? A couple of cells and it's all you need. We don't have a jail. We have people and then we take them to county or they're released. We don't have a jail, but we do have, yep, right over there. What we do have is we bring them in, but there is things of getting the evidence to that evidence room, having to do testing on people in a very small room. Chief talked about at the last informational session, if these guys have to go and test a powder, if they have a car and they have to test a powder and they think that there's something wrong with it, but they don't know if it's coke, they don't know if it's heroin, they don't know if it's fentanyl. They're in a tiny room and it's not a safe space. So there's all these things that go into that, but having it have a good flow, because one of the things we do think about, and I mean, I think it's a good time to think about it, and this is all weighing these pros and cons, is, you know, is having that good flow and what works best for the police department best to do right now so this department's set up for the next 50, 75 years where this building works, as opposed to something that we may have to change down the line. But that is a good point, and I mean, it has been discussed some, and it's not completely out of the realm of possibilities to do that. We have one right back here. If you could just restate your question so they can get it for the YouTube.
Mike, you somewhat answered it. I was wondering on how much you were going to have to pay for the land. That's a big one.
We don't know how much we'll have to pay for the land. What happened with the land was, I want to stress to you all, and especially to those on YouTube that may watch this later, how much respect I have for Waukesha State Bank. They have been completely respectful, cordial, and have worked very well with us so far in the meetings that we've had with them in talking about needing to take this land, or needing this land. I didn't want to do eminent domain, the board didn't want to, so we weren't really considering this site until while all of this was starting, and I would love to tell you it's because we were all like, yeah, we've heard you, we're going to take it out of the park. That wasn't the real reason. Waukesha State Bank, for a very long time, they were going to build and going to build and going to build, but they just hadn't gotten around to doing it. And I was driving in Waukesha, and maybe I jumped the gun. I should have called them. But I was driving in Waukesha, and there was a building I saw, and I thought they were building a brand new Waukesha State Bank. And I thought, wait a minute. I was driving on a sales call for work, and I'm like, you're going to build one here, but you're not going to build one in Hartland when that land has been sitting there looking like that for 10 years? Now, I ended up being wrong on that. I'm willing to say when I'm wrong. They actually were doing a hardcore remodel, even with the roof line and everything, but that's actually their longest standing branch. So I had to apologize to them, and I apologize to you that it wasn't just because the people were coming and saying save the green space, because I was still thinking about the money, but when I saw that, it caused me to make some phone calls very quickly, including making a call to a trustee, calling the attorney, saying what goes into this, is this even possible, and contacting Keller and being like, I know you might not have an answer right now, but I need you to just have an answer right now. Yes or no, can it fit? Can you make it fit? And if it can't, shrink it and find a way. But I'm throwing humor in there, but we got there. So but I do want to stress how great Waukesha State Bank has been. But that's how that came to be, where all of a sudden, go ahead. Oh.
The black shirt. He's been waiting for a bit.
Oh, yes, sir.
Couple questions. Before I was going to recognize the board, wanted to recognize the board for listening to the town about the concerns over Hartbrook Park and taking that off the board. Having what you said, heard that, whatever the reason, it's still good. Hartbrook Park's off the board. So I'm glad to hear that. And I know a lot of people are as well. Some questions about the facilities. The scope and scale of what's proposed for the 29 million. How many years does that get us before, not maintenance, but substantial expansion, capital investment in bigger facilities is necessary?
Brian, do you want to add to this, or do you want me to just go off of what Chief said last week?
Question, couldn't hear.
The question was, what's the scope of the buildings in the regard of how long will these buildings last before we're out of room again? The new buildings, how long will they last? But Chief talked about this a little bit. I don't foresee, I'm saying this as an elected official, it may be a little bit different than, Chief said last time that you usually want one officer per 500 people, which is right about where we're at right now. We're sitting right around 10,000, maybe 10,100, and we have 18 sworn officers, 18 sworn, so I think we're writing. I don't think we necessarily have to have exactly one per 500 as an elected official, and I don't foresee Hartland. I personally think that we would be able to go to, I think we could go double or 1.5 or 2.5 times the population before we'd have to expand based on the building that they're trying to put forth.
And I guess that's my question is, when I'm looking at the square footage expansion and the info that was shared about, this is how many square feet we have now, this is what the new would give. It felt like, and it's just what I'm hearing, not necessarily what you're saying, but it felt like we're building according to a design that'll get us back to even.
Yeah.
Versus where's the built-in.
That's a really good
Right.
point, and
growth
we did
capacity.
take, and I'll let Devin talk also, but the board did take that into account because I really want to stress the word community. And I mean, this really is an amazing community. It really is. Hartland really is an amazing community. But one of the things, that's the hard part to try to get to people. And I want you to know, like in our seats on the board, there's people that have literally come and said to us, we're like, well, I'm not going to be here in 30 years. So why do I care about a building for 50? But we're also juggling with someone like yourself that's like, hey, let's do something for our community because in 40 years, they're not going to have to be building a new building. We build it properly where it can be properly maintained. And we're able to keep that building for 50 or 75 years.
And along those lines, this follow-on second question is, so our community's been going through this with Arrowhead. We had two damn good buildings that were now being told, well, you can't add up, right? It wasn't constructed in the first place to accommodate that. So the only choice is rip it completely down and build new from ground up. So my question is, do these designs accommodate moving up, or we're just going to be right back at a land issue the next time
question.
expansion's
I'll
necessary?
let Devin touch on
Yeah.
it, but I do want to say that we've been
You can go.
cognizant of, as a board though, we've been cognizant of that, even including when we build it, make sure that if we're going to need to build on. I do want to touch, because I don't want to leave fire out of this, because we do have the two going. Fire, you're going to end up hearing from fire that fire's changed dramatically. There hasn't been as many questions about fire, but it's changed dramatically. Sorry if I'm going too long-winded, Devin, just catch me. But fire's changed dramatically because we're a volunteer department. Now we're paid on call now. It used to be full volunteer. Chief can give you the numbers, but I think that Chief said when he got on the department years ago that almost everybody lived in Hartland. People aren't joining the fire department. There's a reason for that. It's not because people are lazy or anything like that, but you basically have to go to school for 6 months because they've changed the certification. Chief can no longer observe and train someone and then just sign. Am I kind of right, Chief? He can't just sign off and say they're good to go. I've trained them. I've watched them, put them through drilling, that kind of thing. But I don't think that fire would have to expand unless the village took on the village of Merton or took on the village of Delafield, and even then actually it wouldn't expand, it would shrink because now you're building separate stations. But the fire department, based on what we're building, would not have to expand because we're covering all the shifts. We're covering those shifts for 24 hours, fully.
So currently we have 4 bunk rooms, okay? I have 2 full-time personnel that stay there 24 and then are off for 48. The rest is all part-time personnel. So I have no room to put any more staff. We're to the point, like President Vanderstill was saying, when I started, there were 47 people on that department and 47 of them lived in the village. Today I have 7 people that live in the village that are still on that department. So everybody else has to stay because they live too far away to respond if we get something big. So we have to have them on site. The plans that we've been seeing so far, we have currently 5 bunk rooms with the ability to expand to 9. So, and that would be just simply probably putting a wall in and then throwing a bed in there for them. So that would take care of us.
Can you touch on health issues too for the people that are in that building 24 hours?
Sure. So the firehouse we're in now obviously was built in 1964, the front half of it. If anybody, I was not quite there yet, I was only 2, but the building next door, 2 doors down, was the old firehouse. So that was the new firehouse that they built. In 1978, we went to EMS service, so that's why in 74 they added the back half so we could put ambulances and stuff in there like that. So, but yeah, it's just our numbers, our run numbers have gone through the roof. If we had a year back when I started 31 years ago with 500 calls in a year, that was a lot. We have 1,000 calls pretty much close to on the book already, and we're going to be looking close to 12, almost 1,300 calls this year. So we've been averaging over 100 calls a month. So,
Thank you for that. With
Yes.
the village offices and the police, are those structures going to accommodate growing up?
I'll give my 2 cents on these. So when kind of back to your first question, when we're looking at a building, it largely depends on the type of community. I'll pick on Sun Prairie. A community that's expanding like that, you have to plan because that is the trajectory of the population. Community like this, that's just not happening. So communities like this, we look at what today's standards are, what the expectations are, how do we make sure that we're meeting today's codes, today's expectations. There are areas that you can add a little square footage with an extra dorm and an extra office, but it does not make sense to make this massive building to then grow into it 20 years from now. My philosophy is if you have population that's fairly consistent, if 20 years from now your population doubles, I'm kind of the thought process that the population in 20 years from now can then put an expansion on. And that leads to your next one. Both buildings would be expandable. Fire is a little unique. So the sweet spot for a full central station is somewhere between 28 and 36,000 square feet. It just, with equipment and crews and, you know, it's a whole presentation, but that seems to be. Once you reach that large of a building, you got to start having satellites. So I envision that this building likely is going to be the central location for the next 100 years. I mean, you're going to have to add on and remodel in the next 30, 50, 80, but I see this being the central, and then you would likely have satellites. Police and admin, can we go up? We haven't discussed it quite yet, but I think it's something that, you know, it makes sense depending on how all of this lays out. And the other part of expansion, there's certain areas of buildings that need expansion. Police being one of them. Evidence room, it's only getting larger throughout time, so making sure that we can continue adding on to that. And it's not that I want, you know, you to add on and add costs later, but having the flexibility. I mean, I just did, a municipality owns their own utility, so with a utility, I got to be thinking 100, 150 years. They need electric forever. So we literally had to change, purchase an extra lot next to them and expand this because they're going to have their electric utility forever. So how do we make sure that we're planning? Everything is a little different, but to your point, making sure we have expansion, it's critical. I've done too many projects where I want to pound my head against the wall because they built 20 feet from the road, and if you could just, you know, shove it over a little bit. Going up, it could make sense, depending on how all this lays out. I mean, to this gentleman's point, if all of a sudden we had all three here, maybe expanding up would make sense. But I'll be very straightforward. I don't have those answers right here, and I'm not going to guess. I think it's a disservice to this group and the community, so we got to do our due diligence yet.
Last question, and I appreciate the time you've given. I think it would help us to know some semblance of what's in our heads for this facility.
In this one?
Yeah.
That's what the tours are for.
No. I mean, we build the new sites, everybody moves out of here. What happens to this?
That hasn't been decided yet. We're still discussing it. It may be sold.
For people to understand what's even fathomable.
You mean for this site?
For this site, right? Are we gonna sell it?
What,
Are we gonna tear it down and make it green space?
right. I mean, right now, I mean, we may sell it. I mean, I'm guessing we're not going to just make it green space and just leave it because we can get value, which helps offset.
Exactly, because if we sell it, let's be smart with that sale, right? And help defer the costs of the new facilities.
Absolutely. I mean, right now, that's kind of where we're leaning, but I don't want to say that's a for sure because the board does have 7 people and that takes votes. We're not there yet, but if I were to have to say which way we're leaning, right now it appears to be leaning that way because it doesn't make, you're going to have less parking here because now it's just the library. So you don't necessarily need to expand the parking lot. You could for downtown, but that's a lot of cost on you guys to, just be like, oh, we're not going to sell it. And, we can take the cost off of that. Yeah.
Do a land swap with Waukesha State Bank and they put here.
I like that dream.
I want that bank that big.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I will. You're welcome.
Yeah, good evening. So just a couple of points. I'm pretty sure if we put this to a referendum, which we don't have to, that the citizens would vote against it. I mean, based on the history of Arrowhead, who, I'm starting to my recollection, back in 16, they needed $64 million or they couldn't go on. They had reports, they had consultants, had to have it. We said no. We said no to 36 million in 17. And then, of course, 260 in 24, no to 136. They managed to find a way to keep educating our kids. So Hartland isn't really growing, other than the slug of quarry people that'll be coming in. We have no more real land to develop. We can maybe annex a little out of Merton here and there, a subdivision, but we're not going to grow much. I appreciate the needs of the fire department as the composition changes from volunteer to more paid, and their needs to expand. That makes sense. I looked through, we had a report done by analysts, 5 bugles, I think, was done in 23 on the needs of the fire department. And I did not see in that report that they called out for new construction or any other things, but now we have Devin. So Devin works for Keller, right? You're a project manager for Keller. And Keller is going to do the job as a cost-plus project manager. Is that set that we've decided that Keller is going to be our guy?
We're working through that yet.
Working through that?
Yep.
So what is that cost-plus? Is it like 2.5%? Did I see that right?
Yep.
2.5% plus around $160,000 a month for 15 months. So Keller's going to stand to make about $3 million on this project.
Well, we're not making that money.
You will earn. You'll generate about $3 million in revenue on a $3 million project. So you could
With
call it about
a lot of people's salaries.
Understand
Okay.
a lot of people.
We're not profiting.
But you are, it seems, our main advisor on what we need. That we have to have this project. We have to have all this stuff. And you are our main guy on how do we do it, how do we save money. So I would strongly suggest we find some independent real estate professional consultants, somebody who doesn't make any money on the project, somebody we can pay to verify the analysis of our needs and our options. What might be our options on how could we go forward and, satisfy the needs of a town that's not growing. So obviously our police in their cramped quarters have somehow managed over the last many years to serve the needs as of admin. And, I'm sitting in a big old space that mostly has some yoga people and knitters come every now and then. Seems like we might be able to do something with this. But strongly, I think we should get an outside independent real estate professional consultants with no profit motive to help us with how to approach this project, which is arguably the biggest thing Hartland has ever undertaken. I mean, for the size of a town, a $30 million project. And yeah, that's my thoughts.
Okay. And to touch on some of that, like with this room, I mean, you're right, this room was used, but like I said, when we started, this used to be the library, and now we can see the size of that. I don't know what the cost of the library was when they expanded it, but I think it was like 3.5 million or something like that. But people come down here, if you look at the floor, there's a dance floor, and you can look around the room. There's people that come down for dance, for rec, like on Mondays when we have our meetings. I don't know the other nights that we have it. But there is people that come down and knit. When the room is empty, we allow people to play sheep's head over there. It's a community room, and we like to have a good community. Regarding, we could look into paying somebody to come in and do an independent study on whether the needs are needed. And I encourage you to go on the tours. In police, there's a lot of things that we take into account with this, and you're right. And just to tell you, the police department came and asked. The 5 came and asked because they were so tight on their space. They didn't demand. And they have been very clear to say, if we want to make them work out of cardboard boxes in the rain, they'll do it. They will be there. If they have to do it in the cold without coats, they'll do it. If they have to not have a garage like they used to not have and scrape their cars, they will be there. No matter how they have to get there, they will get there, so will fire. I think out of my respect for them, if they're coming and someone's saying that there's a needs analysis, I can only say being on the board, and I understand that I don't necessarily share the views of everyone in the public. I'm just being open and honest about my views. I want to see those people I want them to really keep things tight when it comes to budget, but I don't want them working in spaces that are where it's just getting out of control. And evidence room is one of them that's getting out of control, that we're handcuffed on that. The state comes down and says, you have to keep this stuff no matter what for this many years, because if somebody ever is going to appeal, we had a situation in Hartland. It was unfortunately, a lot of people passed away, and it was a homicide/suicide. But evidence from those things has to be kept for a very long time. In that case, there wasn't a lot that had to be kept because of the situation. But if it was just a homicide and someone had lived, that committed that crime, all that evidence has to be kept. And because of the state's demand on us to keep things for as long as we have to keep them, if all of a sudden they go and they try to appeal a case 20 years later, and we screwed up with the evidence, we've all seen on Netflix how they have these cases and and you see it in boxes. Those are the things that happen, and now we're in a lawsuit. And I'm not trying to be a fear monger. I'm just saying we're trying to adapt to the times also and do the best we can, while also respecting the people that do that service. Yes, they can and they will, if they have to, continue to work in this building, in this facility, and say, okay, we'll stay. Part of the reason we haven't talked about a lot tonight is everything that's going on with this building. Now, there's a lot that I could go on, and I try to say it all quick because I don't want to waste your time, but this building was built in 1930, and the Village of Hartland is not Arrowhead. Hartland's Village Hall used to be across the way in the municipal parking lot, so did the library. Then they moved here and they reused a building for police, and they added on a small addition for Village Hall in the 1980s. They've done a great job at reusing properties. Hartland's done a good job at keeping taxes down, but Hartland's also been very honest about what state their property is in. This building has had issues for 5 years. We've been trying to push off making any repairs because we don't want to waste money. We just had to spend $7,000 some, I believe, on a new air conditioning unit because the police department was working without air conditioning in the heat. But we decided to get that repaired, even though we're just kind of throwing the money away because you're paying for air conditioner for 2 years, most likely. But I do hear what you're saying. I know there's other opinions, and we will look into things that have to do with getting individual consultants. I don't want to make it sound like I'm all that, but I feel like we're taking the steps that are appropriate to make sure to try to keep those costs down. But it's something that we could look into on what it might cost to have an independent, you said a real estate
Professional,
executive.
right? And
come in.
I know some people that could help guide you on maybe choices
Sure.
in there. I do have one question on the bidding process. So let's say we're going to build a new admin at the bowling alley, and you say we're going to bid it out. Are we going to, through the municipal bidding process, are we going to build the complete construction with Keller acting as basically our builder, our agent, or is Keller going to be bidding it out to the subs, the plumbers and masons and everything else?
So everything that we would do, 100% of the construction goes out individual bid packages. So then they are bidding directly on the project. The bids come to the village. So everything's open, transparent.
So you're going to be the GC and you're going to bid it out to subs to do the various things.
The subs will bid on the project and they will bid directly to the village for their portion.
Okay, so you're going to have the village offer subs the opportunity or contractors the opportunity to bid on their portion through the village process.
So we wouldn't be building it. We would just be managing it.
But you will still be the GC on the job.
We'll be managing it.
Yeah, okay.
The another thing I want to touch on that I just lost my train of thought, dude, dang it. Sorry, I'll come back to it and I'll say it because I just went
and I'll be
brain fart.
Open. We don't know everything. We evaluated how many sites. It's a work in progress. I don't know everything. I do know enough to say that I don't know. I mean, the gentleman brought it up. The question of can all three fit? We don't know that yet. We're going to dig into it. We're open to ideas. I have no interest in pushing or telling you that you have to do something. We can sit down with our architects and our experts and walk through what the averages and industry demands, but there are no pushing and telling you that you have to do this. I mean, that's just not what we're here for.
Right. And
I want to touch. I did remember what I was going to say. And Chief, if you could, or Ryan, but Chief, do you remember how long was Zimmerman working on the project? Because I'm going to tail off of that. But how long was Zimmerman working on the project?
Yeah, a little over a year.
To Keller?
1 year.
1 year?
1 year.
Okay, so the original company that did it was Zimmerman. Well, I'm going to go back to the Five Bugles, and then I'll get to Zimmerman and then Keller. The Five Bugles report that you're referring to, that is not, when you get into this professional realm, and it sounds like no one steps out of bounds and says, you have to do this. They simply say what's needed within, I call it paint to paint, within the confines and the structure of the department. They say what they suggest should be done. Their suggestion to us was to leave.
They were looking simply at staffing.
Yes.
And response stuff.
And their suggestion, though, was to figure out a way, they didn't put it in the report, but figure out a way to turn it into a full-time department, because based on the size of the village and for the appropriate amount of care to be given to the people and the calls that we receive and the elderly care facilities we have and the whole demographics of all the people we have, Five Bugle suggested that we went to a full-time fire department and stopped relying on people driving from different locations, sometimes, I think 13.
18 full-time staff would be
right.
What the ultimate would be at some point. So
right, and
so
then
that's
we did
6 per shift.
Right, and then we talked with Zimmerman because this building is. I wish I would have said it earlier because it makes it sound like I'm saying it just because. But I mean, this building's deteriorating. If we do nothing, we need, I don't know what the exact cost is, but we got to put a lot of money into this building because it's really, we got windows leaking, we got, all the HVAC system. It's only 100 years old.
How many times has it been remodeled?
Well, the new edition was in the 80s, so.
So Zimmerman was actually the original study on space that came up with the space study. And I don't want to get into, all of a sudden Zimmerman's calling and saying, why'd you say anything bad about us? But the relationship and working relationship and how we were working with them, it just, the time for change was correct. So that's where we reached out to another company. So the study was already done. And then when we reached out to Keller, then we wanted a concurrence on the study. Keller came in, concurred, and then.
We actually had 3 companies, 2 companies besides Keller that we looked at that time.
Keller actually said less space too.
Than Zimmerman.
But I just wanted to touch on that so people knew for the history of it. But
Well, I like hearing the fact that.
can we get you a mic just so that they can? Where do we have?
Oh, one.
Thank you.
I liked hearing the fact that somebody else besides Keller, meaning the chief just reiterated or confirmed that other companies besides Keller were looked at. And if you're in Keller's business, those type of costs are almost always going to be the same, which is the $3 million that he reiterated is going to cost to develop the property, because he's developing it and then he puts everything else out to bid for Hartland to approve of, okay? Now, these locations and stuff that the fire department and the bowling alley site, if something can be worked out there, I would like to remind people who haven't maybe in the back of their mind that they'd like to see all their emergency services in one place or something like that, that I don't think Hartland can accommodate that without doing eminent domain someplace, which I guess everybody, has looked at also. Tax-wise, I've lived here 33 years, correct? Okay, and I live in one of those little houses that you were
Like I do.
referring to. And, I've seen my taxes go up a little bit, but it's always appropriate, I believe, to, what's happening in the village, new fire trucks, be it Arrowhead or whatever, and the tax dollars that would have to go for expansions there and stuff like that. It's always, been justified. And I would like to say that personally, where I live, I like these selections and the way things are going, and I wasn't even aware of the the park plan and that at first, so I guess that's my input on it. The other question I had, and I think it was answered by you in further expansions, how much more can Hartland expand that this would not be an adequate building for gosh knows how many years down, serviceable down the road? So
Historically, if you even look, and you can actually look, like if you type in Hartland, Wisconsin population, it'll pop up on the internet on your phone, or if you're looking at a computer, and it'll pop up and you'll see it slowly climb. It's not going up exponentially, even with what's going in the quarry. You're only talking about, because you're talking about 200 and some units. Realistically, you're talking a maximum. That's if they really pile in there and everybody's got 2 people living in an apartment. You're looking at 400, 450 people, but that's not a huge expansion, really.
Right, but I wasn't really thinking of it in that respect, because I was thinking about individual home ownership, because we are the ones that, not big developments like the quarry development and stuff, took on. That's still a private investment in what they did and their taxes and their development, whatever.
Yep.
When you look at the private individual homeowners, how much more can Hartland expand? I don't
Not a
believe
lot.
that. Okay.
The only way is
So
with,
you're
with
looking at-
BFB condos, and you'd have to go up. Once you're out of land, the only way you can go is up.
Is up, right. Okay.
So I did want to touch on the taxes, just so people know we're not making up the numbers, because I'm not, like I say, and I want you to know, when we give comments, at this level, at the board level, I understand there's individuals that their taxes have gone up. I have someone that's irate with me. And they're upset about their assessment. There's some people in the village that believe, no, you just raise the taxes one year and then you raise assessments. There's been no year, at least since 2017 when I've been elected, that we raised taxes. Heartland has not raised. Your tax bill may go up because you got to remember the county's on there, schools on there, 2 schools, 3 schools if you don't consider WCTC plus the county. That's all on your tax bill. So you look at the total and say, my taxes went up. That's all Hartland. No, it's not, because the taxes for a lot of people didn't go up for Hartland, but the average tax for Hartland didn't go up. When I was elected in 2017, the tax was $4.86 per thousand. Now that's average, saying all the taxing entities, when we charge for tax based on the valuation, the value of the home or business, the tax was $4.86 per thousand. Right now, the tax is $3.77 per thousand. And some people say, oh, that's just because you jacked the assessment up. No, it's not. There are years where we could have charged more tax and we didn't. I'm not saying a lot, but there are years. Now, the whole assessment thing, people do need to realize it's the fact that the value of your dollar went down so much that your houses cost more. You're not getting any more house. It's the value of the dollar being less. It's not that Hartland's charging you more, but you know, that's a whole nother topic. I'm just saying, I know sometimes people think it's a shell game. It's not, and a lot of this is an investment in our own communities, and that seems to be changing with the world too. People come in for 5 years and like, I'm gonna be leaving, I don't wanna pay for this, do it in 5 years. But I'm just, on the taxes, you know, we really do try hard to not spend too much money, and that's where it came from in my saying, talking with Ryan, because Ryan's also, he's our finance director. That's where it came up that if it went up $1.10, it's not that much more compared to what it would be if the taxes had just stayed the same since 2017. But the taxes are not. They're $3.77 per thousand.
I guess I'm uninformed because the police department, I was appalled to find out tonight, which everybody just referenced, that the police department, you know, is working in conditions that are half what they should be, you know, to be efficient. And I didn't know that was happening. I'm glad I get the service I get for where they are. I guess for where they're housed.
Yeah.
And I can say the same thing about the fire department.
Yep.
So
yep.
You're looking at your emergency services, your life-saving abilities, and things like that. And I think it should be looked at seriously, but I don't think it should be taken for granted.
Right. And I would agree with you, and some of this is, community driven and looking at the future. Everybody, you're right. If we were only going to be around and we were going to shut Hartland down in 10 years, I'll be the first to say, do not build these buildings. But if we're considering that Hartland's going to be here for the next 100, 200, and 300 years, which I strongly think that it will be, then I think it's a service to a community, because all the things that we came into when we moved into Hartland, you know, there was people then saying, why should they move on to that field? They shouldn't allow expansion there. We want it like it was when we were kids. And when those people were kids, someone was saying, I wish it was like when we were kids. And we could do that all the way back. And then we'd even get to the Native Americans who say, I wish it was like when we were kids. But the fact of the matter is, it's the world we live in. If you live in proximity to a municipality like we do to Milwaukee, you're going to have suburbs. We're just in the flux of Hartland used to be so country that, people used to really think they were in the boondocks 25, 30 years ago if they came to Hartland. And now at 70 miles an hour, those are changing too, the freeways. They used to be 55, but we're not that far away anymore. You can get from Hartland on the on-ramp to Miller or AmFam Field in 21 minutes. So I'm just saying, I understand the differences.
I'll add to this gentleman's comment. I get to do this all over the state, and a lot of it's public safety. One of the challenges that I often get faced with is communities will go, and not this, just communities in general, when I call 911, someone's here, so what could really be wrong? Police, fire, EMS, they're just notorious folks that they'll make do with what they have. Doesn't mean that what they have is right. It's not safe. It's not, easy to work in. But like he had mentioned, every fire, police station I do, they're going to make it work with what they got. Could it be better? Could it be safe? Yes, but it's just one of those challenges. You call 911, you expect someone to be there, and they're not going to let an old building stop them.
And, no, I will say it. Sometimes I say things that are unneeded, but I'm going to say, does everybody remember, and I'm not playing the guilt card or anything here. I'm just saying I want us to be cognizant of certain things that went on. We're talking about, we're not just looking to build a Taj Mahal just to build a Taj Mahal. We're being respectful for the people that work and do these jobs. And a lot of times I think it does happen where people are like, they'll be fine, they can do it. And you're right, they will. They'll be all right, but it's not fun. And try to think of in your own jobs. It wouldn't be fun if you're working there and the computer isn't working, or you go to get a printer and the printer's not working, or whatever. If you're out on a job site and someone didn't bring the tools and people aren't showing up and you're like, you gotta be kidding me. But they all work, they're all human beings. They all work and do the same things. And, they go through real life stuff too. I don't know how much I can say about it, so I'm not gonna say much, but we did have someone from the fire department that went on that suicide homicide. Those were the people that are going in and having to remove what's in there. We had one person that's so shook up, and I really mean this, that they're not working yet. They were shook up. That was a horrible, horrible scene. When that police officer, does anybody remember the police officer being shot and then the manhunt that went on in Delafield? That wasn't a Hartland. You know what that was? A call to Hartland for help. And we went and helped. And that person, and those departments do the same thing for us. everybody kind of works together, and that's where I'm saying I think we need to remember the sense of community. But when we're dealing with human beings like that, not just looking at it like a number or some money of, they'll be fine. If you don't trust the people that are elected to be watching this stuff, then you also can be watching it and you can come at us. And I agree, any fault that's on us, throw it, because we've signed up for it. But I just want to, I mean, think about that. These are people that are actually working in there, and they're only asking for what they can do to make their jobs work more efficiently, and they're only doing it to serve us, because they could just go home and then let their police departments take care of it, and they wouldn't have to do it. But I understand they're getting paid for it, but I'm just saying, is there a mic? Oh, did you have
He's
a
got
question?
one.
I'll let you go after.
Just for clarification, so as this gentleman said, it's appalling that they're in 8,000 square feet and they need 19 or 22,000 square feet. So for clarity's sake, we touched on it, but fire and police, if they had 19 and 22,000 square feet right now, what would that give them, or what are we missing right now that we don't have that square footage?
So
evidence room.
I'll try to hit the top points. So with fire, it's decontamination. For those who are maybe not well versed or not super involved, you go to a fire, put the fire out. Vehicles, building, all things are made of plastics. And 50 years ago, they didn't know this stuff, but also a lot of the chemicals didn't exist. You go to the fire, you bring all these chemicals on your equipment, all of your turnout gear. You come back to the station, those carcinogens on their skin, on their turnout gear are causing cancer at alarming rates. So it's the shower within an hour. The facility
Do we have
lacks...
that now? I have one shower. Okay.
So if I have 7 or 8 people,
They all have to wait till
To
each
call
person-
it is not a nice shower. It is
And you can go
I
and
just
tour
want to
that
be
tonight
very
if you
straightforward.
want. We're getting to that.
I'm just trying to understand the benefits.
Yeah,
We
the
need
showers,
them.
having all the showers, decontamination, so actually having a room to decontaminate. Dormitories, like you had mentioned, having bathrooms enough for the building. A training room where you can actually teach and educate. A lot of these rooms, they don't have enough space. Apparatus, having enough space so the doors don't hit one another. I mean, you should be able to open up 2 doors. I'm not suggesting, a bowling alley between them, but you should be able to open up both doors and not hit them. Spaces like that for police, and you can chime in here. They are doubling up on a ton of different workspaces. The evidence storage is not nearly large enough. It's one of those things where you're trying to shuffle everything around. Vehicles, they're sitting outside. Even if when they are inside, they're extremely tight. They're trying to fit everything into there. What else am I
there's just a lot of
missing?
inefficiencies with the building that we have currently. So obviously it's a 100-year-old building, and obviously looking now in 2025, we're behind the time and we're out of space. So I'm looking at, we have 18 full-time officers, and then we have 4 administrative assistants. Our administrative assistants work fine in their work area. We do 2 full-time, then 2 part-time, that job share essentially. So, and just walking up there, our evidence room is 180 square feet, so 10 by 18. So all it is one call, like we referenced this murder-suicide, we have all this evidence. If it would just been a homicide case, we would have to keep that evidence for 50 years. We would have been out of space. We've been trying our best to get rid of any evidence that we can after cases close out and there's no appeals. We'll get rid of that evidence and we'll make do with what we have. But we're one call away essentially from being too full in the evidence room. And then from there, we have nowhere to go. We'd be talking about renting storage units or something similar to that and going off-site with our storage for evidence. We do have a cold storage in our DPW. We have a garage there, so we'll keep like our bicycles or larger evidence there. But let's just say we have a fatal accident where we need to keep one of the vehicles as evidence, that would be kept over there. But then we're getting into another one. We're out of space again. Where do we put that vehicle? We can't keep it outside.
And keeping it at DPW is not exactly per state requirements.
Correct. You want it on site. You want it at the police departments.
Not that they want it, it's required. So these things,
Correct.
you're just trying to make do with what you got.
So then we have 1.5, so we have one full-time detective and a half-time detective. That half-time detective works half on the road and then half as an investigator. We don't have space for that, for his office to do his casework. We basically had an old dispatch center. Half of it was made a interview room. The other half was made a detective office with a closet in there. The second detective now works out of that closet. It's probably like a 4x6 space. He just doesn't have the room. Anytime both detectives are working on a case, they can't, their casework, they can't collaborate. So we have to bring it out to a table in the middle of the officer area, and then every night they have to take all that casework back to their offices just to bring it out again the following day. So a lot of inefficiencies that way. I talked about the storage or the property room. To test or package any property, it's on the other side of the police department. So typically you like packaging evidence such as drugs, whether it be guns, whether it be just any other property that we would have to process. We typically, in any other police department, you would process the evidence, package it, and then place it into a temporary locker, which would go through to the property room. We have to take that evidence across the police departments, and whether it be drugs or whatever else, it's inefficient. We don't have any hoods to test drugs, whether it be fentanyl, so we have to have a 2-officer minimum when testing drugs. Let's say it's fentanyl, there's no hood system, the officer is exposed to fentanyl. We need to have another officer just around the corner if he goes down to administer Narcan to counteract that. So it's not the safest way of doing business. Our locker rooms, men's locker room, we have one locker available. So obviously we don't know if we're gonna hire a male or female. Whether a person retires or moves on, we'll have to hire. We're one locker away from having to figure something out. I know that they redid the kitchen area many years ago. They had asbestos in the kitchen, so we know there's asbestos in the building. What else?
That's the main points.
Windows, when it rains, it's like a river on our windowsills. We have to put down towels. HVAC, we had water come from the ceiling because we had pipes freeze, what have you, and then it's coming down on all of our electrical, our video systems are going out. I think and just the sound barriers. So as I mentioned, the old dispatch center was converted into an interview room, and then our detective office right next to it. All it was is a wood door that closes. You can hear the whole interview as you're trying to work on your case, and then trying to talk about something with the other detective while going back in the room. Everything could be heard. You need to physically remove yourselves and go to the other side of the police department to talk about the case, because anything that's said in that room, the suspect or whoever's in there is going to hear it. So just a lot of inefficiencies. Our garage was built for 4 squad cars. We have a fleet of 9, so we're keeping some vehicles outside year-round. And we do our best to take care of the vehicles. They used to be 3-year squad cars, and then we transitioned to 4-year to try to get some more mileage out of it. We've done a good job. I know that we used to park on the hill before we had the garage, and we used to take all of our computers and everything inside and then have to shovel or scrape snow and ice off the windows. Having the garage does help, don't get me wrong, but all of our vehicles, some of our vehicles are outside. So if I have to respond to a call and it's been snowing, I have to brush off my car before I can even go anywhere. So just a lot of inefficiencies, and we're just out of space. We share our desks in the officer area. There's, like I said, there's, if you take out, 4 of us, so there's 14 patrol officers, and they share desks. And then if we have any more than 4 on at a time, we're out of computers, and our whole job's on a computer. Without a computer, I can't even write a paper ticket anymore. It's all on the computer. So just a lot of inefficiencies.
I just want to touch on one thing that you said, because sometimes I do believe, especially if you're thinking of longevity of things, sometimes you can go too cheap. And I don't remember the exact year. Ryan, if you want to jump in, I don't know who else would be here that remember. Chief, you might remember. It was like 2008 or something. The only reason I know that is I moved into Hartland in 2005, and yes, I would sit and I would watch these meetings every once in a while. But they were talking about putting the new windows in this whole village hall and police department. And I remember them arguing, and they really wanted it to be really, 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 really cheap. They put all these windows in within the last 20 years. And if there's leaks, and I'm just saying there's times where, yep, it's cheap now, But there's times where you can go too cheap because honestly, I mean, even old windows should last at least 30 years. When you start putting in commercial windows, I could be wrong on this, but you shouldn't be going, if they're put in properly, most likely that's an installation issue, most likely. But I mean, you should go a good 30 years on window. Am I wrong?
You should get at least 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
so
when,
I'm just
like
saying there
anything else.
is times where you can go.
We don't have windows that fully close once you open them, so if you forget and don't read the do not open, you'll have to stick your head out the window to push it closed and unlock it. So.
Yep. Just so you know, there are tours after, so you will be able to see the detective closet that we call an office.
I have just a quick question for you, and that is, when you're considering the needs of our community, do you also consider where we sit with the other communities that surround us and where their needs are and what their growth is going to be, and if there's opportunity for us to integrate services in some way to decrease our costs as we look at our geography?
Sure.
Yes.
In talking about that, there's others that have expanded. I mean, Oconomowoc expanded police. And Mr. Trustee Trutchell is going to have something to say in a minute. I just didn't catch him in time to get him up here. But Oconomowoc has expanded police. Mr. DeBarge, you may have something to add on what didn't Waukesha do something recent? I don't know all the police departments that expanded.
As far as expansion?
Yeah, he's asking how are we in?
Waukesha PD expanded, I want to say, by, I might have the square footage off, 30,000 square feet. And all that was just based on their evidence room. So obviously City of Waukesha is large city. They need a large evidence room, but they ran out of space at their current police department. So you want to have an evidence room that's large enough, and their 30,000 square feet expansion was just based on an evidence room.
Yep. And I know that, I mean, obviously the town of Delafield isn't going to have PD. They utilize, I think, 40
Waukesha
hours
Sheriff.
a week of the sheriff department. Merton, I'm not sure. They might use, they do use sheriff. I think they use sheriff also. I think the residents in Hartland want more. I'm going to let Trustee Trutchell jump in here because he had something that he wanted to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, with our police force and our fire department.
Do you want the mic?
Please. Thank you. With our police force and our fire department, we've got some pretty incredible officers and firefighters in this village. And the things that you just heard about, the word gets out pretty quickly, and the competitiveness from local municipalities around us, if we don't maintain what they need for their safety and for the environment to do their job the right way, it also can cause attrition in those departments. So I think it's important that, as everybody knows how much onboarding an officer, it can be an expensive deal. It can be expensive to onboard a full-time firefighter. So I just want you to think about that as well. There's a lot going into this, but it's that competitiveness of maintaining a reliable, awesome police force and firefighting force and not losing them to another municipality around us.
That's a good point, Tom, and one that I want to add is, and I think that Chief will remember this, and Chief, if I'm way wrong, correct me, and I'm not saying anything bad about Menominee Falls, wonderful village. There was a time, I mean, this goes back to sometimes you can do things too cheap or say, you'll make do, you'll make do, you'll make do. If I'm not mistaken, there was a time in Menominee Falls where they kind of went way too long with their vehicles, where they had calls coming in that they could not respond to because every time the police or the fire department came and said, we need this because this is what it's causing to repair it, but they all kind of ended up in disrepair at the same time. They were not able, I don't know if it was completely that they had no vehicles, but they weren't able to respond to their calls. But those people were still ready to go and willing to deal with anything. But am I wrong on that, Chief?
No,
I believe
there was one time where they were down to one ambulance and one engine.
Yes.
They
So
had
I mean,
nothing else.
I'm just, these things it's a juggle. It's a juggle. Go ahead.
I'm a perfect example with Lisbon.
Yep.
Lisbon got taken over by Pewaukee.
Yep.
Now their budget is double what
Yep.
it was the year before. So, I mean, you're very accurate with what you said.
And to go off of that, that's part of the reason I'm just, I haven't gone and looked at all these budgets. I look at Hartland and that's what I deal with. I do like, sometimes people think it's just for control. I do like Hartland because I know how much Hartland tries to maintain good equipment. We've done things that make equipment last longer, but we also, are really, really cognizant of the money and that it doesn't get wasted. And it's very easy for it to get wasted in government, even at local government, and in some of these fire departments or police departments or any government department. But I like the fact that we have it here. When some people have said, well, what about, getting together? One of the things that came up at the last meeting was, why don't you have the sheriff take over the Village of Hartland? Based on other communities coming to us and saying, can you do it for us? The only reason that we're not doing it for them is because they didn't agree to the price, because we're not going to make you guys subsidize their police force. And then they go back to am I wrong? They wanted it cheaper than what it would actually cost. So Hartland's residents would be subsidizing them getting cheaper police force because they don't want to pay for having that police, but they want the policing. And it's the same with, all of a sudden you lose that control and it gets really rough. I'm sure you've seen the news. I'm not throwing any shade on any of the departments, but you've seen the news on Western Lakes and Lake Country. Lake Country's battling with communities, and there's things going on with those communities to keep that going. They're raising the prices also, or they're raising things also. I don't know how much, but it sounds like quite a bit. Western Lakes is the same thing, So it is a juggle of, the things that we're going through. And I'm not trying to be all over the place, but this is what makes it so fun and exciting and what makes you just fall in bed after a village board meeting, because we have to sit and think about all these things before we even get to you. And then we're like, okay, light us up with questions and let us know if we did an okay job. But the board does a great job with it. And everybody's happy to serve. I say that kiddingly. Like I said, just trying to keep it a little humorous. Go ahead.
So I do have a follow-up question, though, and I just wonder if this has been looked at all. But you talked about with evidence, and a lot of communities, like you said, Waukesha is expanding. Has it ever? I know you said about off-site storage, that's not ideal, but has it looked at? Is that legal? Like, it seems like this property is obviously square footage-wise a premium cost. Having storage here is ideal, but for just storage on that property, offsite, is that an option for one of our own properties that we already own? Adding a secure, obviously legally it has to be secure.
It depends on the crime that was committed and what the evidence is for, but it could be a consideration to offsite. We have not considered. We have enough storage as we sit today. So in the event we ran out of storage, we would make something work where we could go offsite and make it work.
Making a permanent offsite addition onto one of the buildings we already own for a fraction of the cost per square foot as this property, is obviously a premium cost per square foot, and that property is something we already own, adding something for you guys permanently.
I'm sure it could definitely be considered.
We looked into it for DPW properties, seeing if we couldn't have like a garage there or something, like take some of their garage, because they have other like outbuildings that aren't heated and stuff like that. And we looked into it, but we lose the structural integrity, which all of a sudden you're building a building that has to, it makes it a lot easier to build it onto a building than build another building at DPW that can make it through whatever you want to call it, Category 5 catastrophe.
I'll add some complexity. So when you talk about adding a police usage to another usage, the architect would love to talk about this, so I'll steal his thunder. There's 4 different importance factors. Your village portion and your rec portion is a 2. So a 1 is like agricultural, a 4 is going to be your hospitals. Police and fire are going to be a 3. So when you start adding on to either old buildings such as this, existing buildings, you have a lot of structural reinforcing, a lot of the new codes, and the importance factor. So it's new codes, but then it's also the important factor, adds in some complexity. Not that it can't be done, but those are the types of things that when we look at, well, why does it cost so much to remodel? Things that are outside of our control that the state code requires.
Yeah, there is tours coming up. So no, go ahead. I don't want to
No.
hold people back from answering.
I just think hearing about the testing of drugs and so forth, and that there isn't a hood or there isn't the proper things, and it's very frightening to think that somebody's counting on Narcan, and I've heard you can administer it and then people will relapse and so forth. That's frightening, and then who knows what other drugs are going to come down the road. So I mean, that's really putting somebody's life at risk. It's very frightening.
Same thing we run into, I mean, not exactly the same, but from a long-term standpoint, it's the same thing we run into with what we find out are contaminants and carcinogens that are on these, as the gear is being dried out, you know, that air is being circulated through that building. Basically, imagine walking into a house and it just reeks of mold from the basement because they don't have a dehumidifier, but they got the air conditioner running, but it's not air conditioning the basement, it's just air conditioning the top. I mean, just imagine the same thing. And are you gonna die? Probably not, but in 30 years, could it cause a problem? It could, but they've done studies that show that there's a much higher likelihood with those things that they can cause cancer and all kinds of stuff. So we have tours. Any trustees want to come up and say anything? Any member of the board? You guys have anything, Chief?
No, I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. And like I said, once we get tours going, whoever's more than welcome to come through the police department.
How are we going to work tours if they want to tour police and fire?
Just let me know and I'll go down
Okay,
there
so
and walk
anybody
them
that
through.
does want a tour of fire, because obviously that's a different site, please talk to Chief Jambritz.
No,
And-
I attend the pancake breakfast. I've seen it.
There's no pancakes at this one.
Thank you, everyone,
Got
for
a brand
coming.
new
Really
pancake
appreciate
maker,
it.
though.
And then if anybody wants to tour the police
Absolutely.
station.
If anyone wants to tour the police department, if you just want to meet over here, I'm just going to hand my mic back quick. Hello, sir. How are you?